Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. Please have a seat. It is always a great pleasure to welcome my good friend and partner, President Pena Nieto of Mexico, to the White House and his delegation. Enrique and I just worked together at the North American Leaders Summit in Ottawa last month. Today we have two of the three amigos, although the handshake is a little easier when it's just between two people. Let me start by saying something that is too often overlooked, but bears repeating, especially given some of the heated rhetoric that we sometimes hear. The United States values tremendously our enduring partnership with Mexico and our extraordinary ties of family and friendship with the Mexican people. Mexico is our third largest trading partner. We sell more to Mexico than we do to China, India, and Russia combined. Every year, millions of tourists and business people and friends and family cross our border legally. Every day, $1.5 billion in trade and investment crosses our border, and that's trade that supports over 1 million jobs right here in the United States on a whole host of issues, from our shared security to climate change. Mexico is a critical partner and is critically important to our own well-being. We're not just strategic and economic partners. We're also neighbors, and we're friends, and we're family, including millions of Americans that are connected to Mexico by ties of culture and of language. And that's why, as president, I've worked to deepen the partnership between our two nations. And today, Enrique and I discussed ways to keep strengthening the U.S.-Mexico partnership. First, through forums like our high-level economic dialogue, we're going to keep working to boost trade and grow our economies and create more opportunity for our people. With today's air transport agreement, we're expanding the number of airports that businesses and consumers can fly from, which will make travel and trade more affordable and more efficient. Both our countries are working hard to bring into effect the Trans-Pacific Partnership so that our workers can compete on a level playing field across the Asia-Pacific region and can open up doors to new markets. I reiterated to President Pena Nieto that although I am disappointed in the Supreme Court's failure to come to a decision on our immigration executive action, it is my firm belief that it will be in the interests of the United States, especially our economic interests, to pursue comprehensive immigration reform. Second, we are deepening our robust partnership on energy and environmental issues. Both of our nations are committed to ensuring that the historic Paris Agreement is fully implemented. And we're going to keep on working towards the goal that we announced last month in Ottawa, generating half the electricity in North America through clean power by 2025. With that goal in mind, we are pursuing an agreement this year on sharing civilian nuclear technology. This fall, our new U.S.-Mexico Energy Business Council will meet for the very first time to strengthen the ties between our energy industries. And Mr. President, I want to thank you for your vision and your leadership in reforming Mexico's energy industry. I'm also pleased that our nations will continue working to protect our shared ecosystems and environmental heritage. Third, we'll continue to protect the health and safety of our people, especially from the opioid epidemic that is taking so many lives and devastating so many communities. Both of our nations, we agreed, share a responsibility to combat this crisis. Here in the United States, we're working to improve treatment and prevention and reduce the availability of illicit drugs. And I applaud President Pena Nieto's commitment to combating organized crime and for developing a new plan to curb poppy cultivation and heroin production. We continue to deploy 21st century technologies to secure our shared border, and as Mexico makes important reforms to its judicial system, we are working together to strengthen law enforcement and to strengthen observance of human rights and the rule of law. Fourth, we're stepping up our efforts to tackle regional and global challenges, from confronting cyber threats to fighting diseases like Zika and dengue. We'll keep partnering with Central American countries to to address the instability and poverty that's prompted so many people to embark on the dangerous journey north. And even as we address migration challenges in our own hemisphere, I am very grateful that Mexico is taking an important step on refugee issues and will be co-hosting our Refugee Summit at the United Nations this September. And finally, we continue to strengthen the strong ties between our people. We want more American students studying in Mexico. We want more Mexican students studying in the United States. So today we agreed to extend and update our educational cooperation. Through efforts like our 100,000 Strong in the Americas initiative, we're expanding opportunities for educational exchanges and scientific partnerships and research collaborations. And we're working to help girls learn around the world, including Mexico's commitment to support teachers in schools throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. In closing, since this is most likely to be our final White House meeting, I'm reminded of what President Pena Nieto said when he first came here almost 4 years ago. Enrique, you said that our nations had a great opportunity to have a closer link of brotherhood, of sisterhood, of collaboration, and of course, of great accomplishments. I am proud of what we've achieved together and proud to stand with you and the Mexican people as our brothers and sisters in progress. And I'm confident that our nations will continue to grow even stronger and more prosperous together in the future. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank President Barack Obama for this very kind invitation to be holding this official visit here at the White House, perhaps the last one that will be taking place here at the White House during your administration, President Obama. And I would also like to particularly here say how important this friendship is, the friendship we have always had from President Obama, and he has been, and his administration, they have been very good neighbors. He has been a very good neighbor and a president committed with the less favored of his country and with stability also and harmony in our hemisphere and with the solution of global challenges, as for instance, climate change, international migration, and the reduction of nuclear weapons. I would also like to recognize in his administration the decisive support favoring migrants, including the over 35 million people of Mexican origin who live in the United States, who are part of the generation of wealth and employment in this country. I would also like to take advantage of expressing our condolences of the Mexican people, my personal condolences for the lamentable events in Texas and Louisiana. I fully recognize and acknowledge in President Obama a leader committed in our bilateral relationship, which I should say is today going through one of its best moments and stages in the relationship of the history between our two countries. In this visit, we have agreed to work on an agenda since 2013, a multi-thematic agenda favoring regional competitiveness. We coincided during our meeting this morning on the importance of institutionalizing accomplishments so that they will be lasting throughout time. With a bilateral forum on higher education this year, over 64,000 Mexican students will be carrying out academic activities here in the United States. And on the other hand, the high-level economic dialogue with the participation of officials of both administrations of the highest ranking level has undoubtedly become a platform for integration, competitiveness, and growth. And we have also agreed, ladies and gentlemen, in this meeting to give it a permanent character so that the benefits that derive from this dialogue will be extended throughout time. Now we have joint cargo pre-inspection programs to reduce costs of up to 50%. That is half the cost, and waiting times that have also been reduced by 60%. We've also implemented this project, this program, at the Laredo, Texas airport, at the Mesa Otay Baja border crossing, and soon this will also be operating in Ciudad Juarez. With projects such as this, we're building a safer, more modern, and agile border, a border that undoubtedly generates prosperity for both countries. Under this framework of competitiveness, we're now are celebrating going into effect of the bilateral air agreement favoring connectivity between both countries. So that as of the moment this agreement goes into effect, we're going to have more flights that will be better connecting Mexico and the United States. And today we've also formalized the Energy Business Council to support Mexico's transition towards an open and competitive market, and we said that issues related to security and migration should be analyzed from an integral, comprehensive perspective under the principle of shared responsibility. We coincide in the fact that the consumption and fighting consumption and trafficking and heroin is a priority, and that we should find solutions to this challenge. We both face through this. We have created a high-level task force on drugs focused on heroin and fentanyl. And we've also decided to increase our cooperation with the governments of Central America, especially Guatemala, Salvador, and Honduras, so that we can look into migration issues, especially the protection of children that are traveling unaccompanied. Finally, let me refer to the electoral process that's taking place here in the United States. And let me say that the closeness between the United States and Mexico is more than just a relationship between two governments. It is a solid, a sound, unbreakable relationship among millions of peoples who live in both nations. And for Mexicans, for Americans, we are all united by 3,000 kilometers of border with neighboring states, 10 neighboring states, and with population of over 15 million inhabitants. And their well-being depends on the well-being of their neighbors. And for the Mexican people, for the Mexican government, the very good relationship with the United States of America is, of course, essential. And from now on, and right here, let me express my absolute will of collaboration to whomever is elected in November as the leader of this great nation. The next Madam or President of the United States will find in Mexico and its government a constructive attitude with proposals and good faith to strengthen the relationship between our two nations. I am certain, ladies and gentlemen, that the political process in the following months will be characterized by the intensity of the debate and the contrast of ideas and the vitality of the citizens' participation, according to the great democratic tradition that characterizes the United States. The Mexican government will be observing with great interest the electoral process of this country, but it will not give its opinion. It will not get involved in said process. This is an issue that fully, exclusively corresponds to the people of the United States. And Mrs. Hillary Clinton and Mr. Donald Trump, I would like to express to both of them my greatest respect, my deepest respect. And from right now, I propose going into a frank, open dialogue with whomever is elected on the relationship between our two nations. I am sure that with the government of the United States, it will be possible to take a step ahead so that we can face common challenges and take advantage of our enormous opportunities that we share, of course, and find solutions for possible differences. Undoubtedly, for Mexico, it is very important for the United States to do well, and for the United States to have a strong economy. And for the United States, it's also very convenient for the Mexican economy to also do well. And your next Madam President or President will find in Mexico a strategic partner to face economic security issues that we share and all the challenges that we share. I would like to reiterate, President Barack Obama, my appreciation for your hospitality, for this fraternal meeting, and for everything, because this is tracing the route and the promise that we can continue working together as sister nations and neighbors. And I reiterate my broadest recognition, President Obama, for being invariably a great friend of Mexico. Thank you very much.
Got time for a few questions, starting with Kevin Cork.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Wondering if you had a chance to take in the RNC last night, get your reaction to the comments made by the Republican presidential nominee, and specifically, how do you counterbalance, as we look ahead to Philadelphia, how do you counterbalance what was clearly an appealing message to many working class Americans? And I wanted to drill down also on his comments about the wall. He said, once again, there's a need for a wall. And I asked that question because you and I know that the United States spends tens of millions of dollars on a barrier between our two countries already. So I'm wondering, where does Mr. Trump have it wrong as far as a need for a wall? And you may also know, sir, that your approval ratings are historically high. Congrats on that. And yet you're right track, wrong track. About 2/3 of Americans still say we're on a wrong track. Can you sort of square that disconnect? Is that unfair to say that's an indictment of your presidency? And Mr. President, thank you for coming. Two simple questions. One, and you kind of touched on this, Donald Trump very well could be the president in January. How do you work with a person? How do you partner with a person that you've previously compared to Hitler and Mussolini? And specifically on anti-narcotic interdiction and anti-human trafficking interdiction on the border, are you satisfied with the job that you've done as president, and what should Mexico be doing more of to help stem the tide? Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate the city of Cleveland, Secret Service, local law enforcement that managed a big influx of people and the occasional protester and just a lot of activity and made sure that everybody was looked after, everybody was safe. I think they did a great job hosting. Second, the Republicans had an opportunity this week to share their vision with the country and emphasize those issues that they thought were important. And I'm going to let the American people judge how persuasive their arguments were. Next week, the Democrats will have an opportunity to present their vision of both the progress we've made and how we make sure that everybody gets opportunity and security in the future. I noticed a little bit editorializing there, Kevin, when you said, how do I counter a message that was clearly appealing to working class Americans. I don't know if you've talked to all of them. So it's not really clear how appealing it was. We'll find out. That's what elections are for. I did not watch the convention. I don't think that's a surprise. I got a lot of stuff to do. And they are pretty long events. But I did read some of what was said. And the one thing that I think is important to recognize is this idea that America is somehow on the verge of collapse, this vision of violence and chaos everywhere, doesn't really jibe with the experience of most people. I mean, I hope people the next morning walked outside and the birds were chirping and the sun was out, and this afternoon people will be watching their kids play in sports teams and go to the swimming pool and Folks are going to work and getting ready for the weekend. And in particular, I think it is important, just to be absolutely clear here, that some of the fears that were expressed throughout the week just don't jibe with the facts. So let's take two specific examples. When it comes to crime, the violent crime rate in America has been lower during my presidency than any time in the last 3-4 decades. And although it is true that we've seen an uptick in murders and violent crime in some cities this year, the fact of the matter is that the murder rate today, the violence rate today, is far lower than it was when Ronald Reagan was president, and lower than when I took office. We've just gone through a tragic period where we saw both tragedy in Minnesota and Baton Rouge, and then the insanity and the viciousness of people targeting police officers. We are all heartbroken by that, and we're all troubled by how we can rebuild trust, support law enforcement, and make sure the communities feel that they are being fairly policed. But the fact is that the rate of intentional killings of police officers is also significantly lower than it was when Ronald Reagan was president. Now, those are facts. That's the data. When it comes to immigration, I think Americans expect that our immigration process is orderly and it is legal. And we have put unprecedented resources at our border. Well, it turns out that the rate of illegal migration into the United States today is lower by 2/3 than it was when Ronald Reagan was president. We have far fewer undocumented workers crossing the border today than we did in the 80s or the 90s or when George Bush was president. That's a fact. So the one thing that I think is important is, obviously there are going to be different visions about where we should go as a country, how we can provide jobs, how we can make sure that our kids are able to get the education they need to succeed in the 21st century. How do we deal with our budget? How do we make sure our tax system is fair? How do we deal with very real issues around growing inequality or wages that have not gone up as fast as we want, and the real pressures that a lot of families feel? But we're not going to make good decisions